So welcome to another edition of Coffee, Cards, and the Cosmos. So, for tonight, for our discussion, I thought we might start with how people find a good psychic. I went by word of mouth, actually. I found you from a girl I met at the Natick Mall, and it was probably the first and last time we got together. So, it's probably meant to be. Known each other for a good, over 10 years now. So for people who are looking for a good psychic, where should they look, and what are some of the things that they want to consider when they're searching for the right psychic for them?
That's a good question. It's, from back when to where we are now, it would only have been like word of mouth and things like that. But if someone has never been exposed to a reading or been around someone to advise them who's a good reader, I would start with possibly the internet, and I would do research there. And I would try to narrow it down to testimonials, or base some of it on their actual predictions that have come into play. That's a very good indicator of a good psychic. Sometimes, also looking at psychics that have done investigative work or have assisted police and things like that, that leads a little bit of credibility too. But in general, I would think word of mouth. Word of mouth.
Okay. If you don't have friends that are into psychic readings, you'd then suggest the internet and perhaps checking places where they say that they read for some feedback? Or
Yes. It is absolutely worth spending a very good amount of time researching the psychic as far as their testimonials from clients. How long have they been in business is also a very good indicator. Just like any profession, it's kind of hard to get to the center of things. So you want to look for people that have been doing it for quite a long period of time in the same area. Usually if they're doing something for a long period of time in the same area, it's safe. You don't want to necessarily base it on a price either. You don't want to necessarily say that, oh, this guy's $300, so he has to be good. Because the guy over here that's $25, he could be even better than the guy that's $300. And the difference might be a few variables as far as, business and things, but we shouldn't base, it off of price. With that said, you want to be leery if you come across 900 numbers or 800 numbers or numbers that are based on minute sales. Because if we're breaking it down to minutes, then you want to look at that. Because a real intuitive or a real psychic is not necessarily going to want to categorize it to the minute. It's very exact.
So trying to lead people or steer people away from reaching a phone bank of operators who are designed to make you run up your bill and give you a cliffhanger, and then you dial back and they're like, oh, come talk to me, this is my extension, and you never get them, so you get someone else who leads you on for another 10 minutes, and then the bill keeps accruing.
And the bill accrues. And now with that said, though, I also have to interject and say, I do read for people by the phone. It's a set price when we do these things, and it can be done. But just be leery is all I'm saying. If it's about the $4.99 a minute type thing.
So that being said, we've talked about how to try and find a psychic for yourself in your area. How can you tell people a bit about determining who's a good psychic as opposed from one of these $4.99, I shouldn't say that, I don't want to slam honest people that are making a living that way. So aside from being given information that just doesn't seem to jive with you, or nothing comes true or whatever, how would the average person ferret out a good psychic from
that's
psychics that aren't maybe the right psychic for them.
Yeah. No, psychics are a lot like therapy in the regards of, a certain psychiatrist is going to work for a certain individual but might not work for another. And it's like that in the psychic field too. Because you can get a psychic that's going to read someone really well, and you can also get a psychic that might not be able to pick up on certain things. The way to gauge a good reader is, I know people forecast things, and if you're sitting with someone and there's no evidence or proof that their forecasts have come true, what you want to do with a psychic is you want to at least walk away with confirmation of the things that you're going through at that time. So, like you go to the reading, and although he has not forecasted future events, he has highlighted certain specific areas that you're dealing with. Because the psychic's job, although to lay out, future predictions and directions, their real job is to assimilate and highlight what's going on in the present. It's good to get the future, but it's really important to look at the present, highlight it, so that the querent or the client can make the appropriate decision with the best knowledge at the time.
What's a querent?
I'm sorry, querent is another word for client, or the person that receives the reading.
You've discussed the fact that telling a good psychic or discerning a good psychic from one that may not be a good fit for you doesn't always have to do with everything they told you came true.
Right.
So what can we look for in a reading? What are the hallmarks or milestones of a good reading?
This is important. After looking back over many readings that I've done, what I've come to find is that although a general reading is good, like some people might go to a reader and say, I'm not saying a word. I'm going to let the reader tell me what they feel. So then I can see if they're right. And although that's a great attitude to have, borderline skepticism, it is healthy. However, that would be warranted if we never met the psychic, if there was no word of mouth, if there was no confirmation that the person is, viable. If you do find that the psychic has a reputation or does have confirmation, it's very, very important to ask questions. The reading is only good as the question asked. You see, with cards, you're consulting. And you're not consulting the psychic, you're consulting what the psychic is interpreting through the cards in and of around both parties. So when you ask a question, the more definitive the question is, the more definitive the psychic can give to you. Because if you don't ask the question and you leave it to the psychic, you will walk out with a reading, yes, but it will be debatable what was told to you is important or not, because it's the psychic's perception.
So it's a more definitive answer that they can give you if you ask a more discerning or detailed question.
That's right.
Okay.
So I suggest before you go to the reader, spend the evening before really thinking about specific details that you want answers to, because that's why you go to the psychic. And the psychic should be able to give you specific answers. Yes, no, and maybe.
Okay.
So it's very important to ask questions. It really is.
So here's another question for you. In thinking about readings, I know when I've had psychic readings done by someone other than yourself, I often tend to be impressed if somebody seems to be right on the money and they're picking up stuff other than what the cards give them. In other words, they put the cards down in a layout, but I can tell that they're channeling information through them, because at one point, and I've seen you do it, you just deviate away from the cards, you use them as your impressions, but then you seem to go into more detail and it's detailed. It's not given you directly from the cards. It seems to be detailed from whatever your sources are,
right,
above and beyond this world. Do you, as a professional psychic, feel that, I don't know how to put it, a mark of a good psychic could be that they wander away from the deck and just use it as a guideline, and that they can just off the top of their head give you the impressions that they're getting without looking at every specific card and saying, oh, this card means this and this card means that, and that's lying next to that, so that's in relation to that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that would depend on any given day, any given psychic, and a lot of variables, because I find for myself there are days where the information that is clear audio or telepathic in nature is heightened so much that the cards would be just a focal point, and it would confirm what the telepathic innuendos are. Mm-hmm. And so the cards are good to pay attention to details. So in other words, cards are good for specifics, but a psychic's job wouldn't be just to do the cards or just to have telepathy or clear audio. A psychic, I look at a psychic as jack of all trades, master of none, but yet can fixate on one or two things and make that a staple. Mm-hmm. Whereas other intuitives or other healers might have specific arts. A psychic can, they might be able to sense the ghost and see the ghost, but they might not be a medium, so they can't hear the ghost. They can interpret the cards and give you meanings, but they also might be able to tell when there's health issues going on, but they're not a doctor. So the psychic can give you the base formula, but he also might send you to the holistic doctor, or he might recommend, reflexology, because the psychic deals with energy and intuitive information to help the client process it to make the best choices for their life. Mm-hmm. That's what the psychic does. They mirror what you're going through. But if a psychic professes to, I'm going to cure you, or I can take away all your problems for a fee, or I can do this, or I can do that, that's not the psychic's job. Because the psychic that says, I can, is taking the power away of free will from the client. So whenever anyone ever says, I can, the client needs to say, Because the client's there so that they can. They just want to assess the choices.
Because I know people that's happened to. It's like, oh, I can do this for you. Oh, well, that didn't work, so if you give me some more money, right, I can do this for you, and it's even bigger and better than the other thing was. And I've seen people sort of been led down the wrong road that way.
Yes.